Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is James Terry with another episode coming to you from JTZ TCG, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Champions Path set list that has officially been released today. I'm sure some of you have already read it, some of you may have already seen it, some of you may have already gone through the list or watched videos on it, but I'm going to give you my take on it. So, first and foremost, let's get it out there. This is the big thing. We have learned now we are getting a shiny Charizard V. It was rumored we may get this. It was rumored we may not get it because it was an exclusive thing in Japan that they were doing a limited print run for in their tournaments they were holding. But now we officially have word that we are getting the shiny black Charizard V. It's going to be super, super expensive in the likes of also getting the Charizard VMAX on market right now. The Charizard VMAX from Darkness Ablaze is already hitting for about $100. The shiny Charizard and the Rainbow Rare Charizard VMAX are just going to be that much more from the collector standpoint. And this is what everybody's going to be looking for. It's just like basically Hidden Fates, but for 2 cards, and it's gonna get crazy. It's gonna be hard to get your hands on it if you haven't already pre-ordered some of the Elite Trainer boxes or the pen sets or the Marnie set that everybody's looking to get their hands on. So if you haven't gotten it already, you may have to wait till after the initial rush. So besides that exciting thing, we're going to go ahead and take a look at into the list. It is very small compared to what we would normally see in expansions. Again, the main hype for this is the Shiny Charizard and Rainbow Charizard VMAX. But with that being said, we are still getting some pretty nice cards in this set that might tweak the meta just a little bit right before Vivid Voltage comes out. So we're going to take a look at it real quick. So starting it off, we do get a new V. It is the Venusaur V with 220 hit points. Its first attack for 2 grass, 1 colorless, Pollen Bomb does 80 damage, and your opponent is now asleep and poisoned, so you get a double special condition on the active Pokemon. And then for 3 grass, 1 colorless, Solar Typhoon does 220 damage, and you can't use Solar Typhoon during your next turn, which is very easy to work around, of course, with Switch, Bird Keeper, Lana, and what have you. With that being said, though, I just don't see Venusaur V getting a lot of playtime. This is more just because of the V starter decks we see in Japan, and it's making its way into this set. Maybe later down the line we get a Venusaur VMAX that makes this just a bit more enticing, but just 3 retreat costs, 220 hit points, Fire still decently being played, especially with Baby Blacephalon. I don't see it getting a lot of play. And then next we get down to the Weedle to the Beedrill line. Beedrill, 1 energy, does 80 damage. It has 140 hit points. Typical for stage 2, and of course the active Pokemon is poison, so not that great. We do get a reprint of Eldegoss V. It's just going to have a different artwork than what we've already seen. We get a new Vulpix, a new Victini. Victini kind of not really getting anything special going on in this set. 1 colorless, you get to draw a card, and then for 1 fire, 1 colorless, you do 30 damage. Our next V for our V line is Incineroar V. So also has 220 hit points, part of the V starter line we're seeing in Japan. And for 2 fire energies, 1 colorless, it does Grand Flame, which does 90 damage, and you can attach up to 2 fire energies from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. So we get energy acceleration while also getting 90 damage at the cost of 3 energies. I just don't see it worth it. And then its next attack, 3 fire, 1 colorless, does 220 damage. As far as fire Pokemon go, I mean, you have Baby Blacephalon, you have Cindy Scorch VMAX making huge waves in the meta right now. It's pretty much the fire staples. I don't see Incineroar V gaining any hype or getting anything. There's much better ways to accelerate energies off a V Pokemon like Victini V. So for a lot cheaper, I just don't see Incineroar V getting a lot of playtime again unless we get a pretty good VMAX to go with them. We do get a new Silisipede and a Cindiscorch. This one is not as impressive as its VMAX counterpart. Only does 50 damage for 1 fire, 2 colorless, and your opponent's burned. And then for 2 fire, 2 colorless, do 140. Now, we got a Carvanha, a Sharpedo. Again, neither one of them really relevant. This is an interesting one, and I am actually kind of waiting to see what Wailord V does to impact the meta. So, first off, this is a V. Not a VMAX, a V with 280 hit points. That is huge to have a Pokemon that is worth 2 prize cards for only 280 hit points. And then we scroll here. Its first attack, Pump Up. Attach up to 3 basic water energies from your discard pile to this Pokemon. So we have a way to recover energies if, for whatever reason, maybe we got one Wailord V loaded up, it gets knocked out. We can use this, load up another one. Now, its second attack for 4 water energies, which is very easily done, especially with Frostmoth. You have Capacious Bucket. You can flip 3 coins, and the attack does 120 damage times the number of heads. And with this, we also got the Stadium from Darkness Ablaze that allows you to reflip that we've seen pretty often here in the gaming world. If you've been playing TCG Online, people are kind of experimenting with that Glenwood Tangle Stadium. But this could potentially, if you get all 3 heads, do 360 damage, knocking out anything in the meta. Now, even if you say only got 2 heads and then 1 head next turn, you're still setting up a 2-hit KO. And that's kind of what the meta is shaping up to be right now, is 2-hit KOs. Most Pokemon can't take a 280 hit point right off the bat. Now, of course, you have Eternatus that, if all maxed out, does 270, plus, the Galarian Zigzagoons can take a knockout on this. But the math is very hard to reach, and for it being 2 prize cards, I definitely think this is something we're going to see get experimented with the Frostmoth, the Glenwood Tangling, Capacious Bucket. I definitely see it as, if not a meta attacker, it's going to be one of those stall decks that we have popularly seen Wailord be abused for years now because of its huge HP. So moving on, our next V is Dreadnought V. So it has 210 hit points, average for a standard V, but it does have an ability that lets it take 30 less damage from attack. So essentially the 30 plus the 210, you're actually getting 240 hit points out of Dreadnought V. So that's pretty good for a standard V. And then for 2 waters, 1 colorless, we have Power Bite, which does 130 damage, and you make it where the defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. Now, with that being said, that's decent, but most Pokemon aren't hard retreating right now these days, outside of using the Air Balloon to retreat decrease the retreat cost. We have Bird Keeper now, utilized a lot. Of course, everybody's running 4 switches. And of course, we still have Mallow being heavily played in the meta for the recovery and switchability. So while this is decent, an add-on to the attack, 130 damage for 3 water energies, really doesn't even set you up for a 2-hit KO to go into a Pokemon. Doesn't even really knock out most tag team GX Pokemon. But we do go down. We do have a VMAX of Dreadnought. It has 320 hit points, which is kind of low considering the, defensive capability power, if you will, of Dreadnought, and then turning into a VMAX. I really would have liked it seen at least 330, even pushing the envelope for 340, but 320 is what we ended up with. He does also take 30 less damage from attack, so in reality that does turn into 350 hit points. So that hard shell ability retaining into the VMAX form. And for 2 waters, 1 colorless, it does Gmax Stone Surge. So it does 160 damage plus flip a coin. If heads, the attack does 80 more damage. So again, Glimwood Tangle, another perfect example of this being used in the meta. If you flip the coin, get heads, you're doing 240 damage. And then after that, you would do 160. Even if you didn't get heads, you're setting up 400 damage, knocking out anything in the meta. Even if you didn't get heads on either attack, you're still doing 320 damage, knocking out most things in the meta. So it's decent attacker, but for the 2 waters and 1 colorless, you're definitely going to have to run Frostmoth in this. It does have the lightning weakness, and even with rotation, we have seen a significant drop in decks such as Pikarom go down. There's still modifications to the list going on that, since I've been playing online, I have seen it tweaked just a bit to where it's not as effective as it has been, but Pikarom is definitely still being played. Actually, if you're playing right now on TCG and the ladder, you get to win Pikarom if you win enough wins. So Pikarom, I don't think, is still going away anytime soon. I think some people are kind of figuring out how to tweak that deck list even after rotation, everything gets lost. I don't see Dreadnought VMAX really getting much play, especially with us having this Wailord V coming into the mix too. I think I would elect to have the Wailord V over the Dreadnought VMAX for a 2-prizer versus a 3-prizer, in my personal opinion. Plus, we get to boost this with Cape of Toughness, so now we're talking, 330 hit points on a 2-prize card attacker, and it's only 20 points shy of what a VMAX 3-prize card attacker is. So, moving on, we get another V, which is one I'm actually excited for, as well as a bunch of other people, and how it's going to affect the meta, is the new Gardevoir V. So, again, Fairy being out of print, Gardevoir has now been switched to a Psychic type. Does have 210 hit points, again, average for a V, and then we go down here for 1 Psychic Energy, we do Magical Shot, 30 damage, not that high. Would like to see at least 50 damage for 1 shot on, or 1 energy cost on a V. But its second attack, 2 Psychic, 1 colorless. We do have Overflowing Wave. So this does 120 damage, plus the attack does 80 more damage if you healed any damage from this Pokemon. This is going to be very critical to think about, because later on in this list, we get a new item card that allows you to heal 80 damage off Psychic Pokemon at the cost of discarding 1 Psychic Energy. So it's going to be basically printed to be used for this Gardevoir and Gardevoir VMAX we're about to take a look at. So for 3 color, 2 Psychic, 1 colorless, you could potentially be doing 200 damage plus healing 80 damage off this 210 HP Gardevoir V. Now we go down to our Gardevoir VMAX, also has 320 HP. Pretty standard for the VMAX. And for 2 Psychic, 1 colorless, we do Max Cure, which is 180 damage, plus you get to heal 50 damage from this Pokemon. So we lose a little bit of attack power for the trade-off from the V, going from the 120 to the 80 for 200 when healed. But with this, the trade-off is we're doing 180 damage, plus we're healing 50 damage from the Pokemon. You combine that with the Soda Can that allows to heal on Psychic Pokemon, you're healing for 130 damage off the Pokemon. Now, if you also throw in Hyper Potion, Mallow and Lana, definitely in this deck, between Mallow and Lana, Soda Can, you're healing 200 damage, basically erasing a single shot that somebody is setting up for a 2-hit KO on you, and making them start all over again. And that can be devastating for a turn of events in a match. So this one I definitely think is going to see some play. If we still had Malamar in the rotation, this would be super sick, but of course we don't. There are other ways, of course. Now we have Turbo Patch to help accelerate energies onto it. And of course there's part attachments, there's Horror Energy we can throw into this. There's definitely ways to get the 3 energy cost attachment done for Gardevoir VMAX. But it's definitely an interesting thing, and again, we'll look at that new item card being revealed that is essentially being printed for this card. So moving on, We have Hatenna, the Hattrem, and then Hatrini. So Hatrini has a little bit of a decent ability, does have 150 hit points for a stage 2, which is decent, but if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon is damaged by an opponent's attack, the attacking Pokemon is now confused. And for one Psychic, one Colorless, Life Sucker does 100 damage, plus you get to heal 30 damage from it. Again, only 150 hit points, so typically this is probably going to get knocked out in a one-hit KO, especially if we're going against any tag team or VMAX deck. So the healing factor, not really anything, but the status condition is decent. I don't see, again, it really being utilized. It is Stage 2. Stage 2s always have a hard time keeping up with the meta, especially with how fast the Vs and VMAXs are swinging right now. Moving along, we get our next new V, and it is the Galarian Corsola V. So it does have a hit points of 190, but this one, like its baby version, has an interesting ability to inflict damage on your opponent for every time they attack it. So Eating Aura, as long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, when your opponent attaches energy from their hand to one of their Pokemon, put 3 damage to that Pokemon. So every time your opponent attaches an energy, if they, welder, for say that they do the 2 welder and the 3rd energy attachment, you're putting 90 damage on that Pokemon. You combine this with Actrazult that we got from Darkness Ablaze, which also has an ability similar to this for every energy attached. These can go in sequence with each other. So you have Galarian Corsola V in the active spot. You have, say, 3 Actrazults on your bench with this ability. You're wheeling potentially, in a welder case, anywhere from 90 all the way up to 120 damage just from your opponent attaching energies. And then for one Psychic, one Colorless, Hollow Missile, we do 60 damage, plus we get to put 3 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way we like. So also setting up the bench for any other Pokemon, maybe they're prepping, getting ready, attaching energies to, you're just inflicting more damage onto them. So this is an interesting concept. I think this is a great partner to go with that Actrazult that we got from Darkness Ablaze. It'll actually be something I'm looking forward to making and trying out, and just seeing the damage spread and how it can affect this meta of all these big HP Pokemon we have going on right now. And then speaking of big HP Pokemon, we get the big cake coming up. So we get the Alcremie V. It does only have 170 hit points for a V, so kind of low in the likes of Crobat V, Dedenne GX, Realm. It, for one Psychic Energy, does heal 30 damage from each of your bench Pokemon, so can heal off, some of this bench sniping that we're seeing across some decks, but that's not worth, losing a 2 prize cards over trying to heal 30 damage. And then for one Psychic, 2 Colorless, does 100 damage, and the defending Pokemon is a basic Pokemon and can attack during your opponent's next turn. So this is actually decent to set up, especially if we're going to evolve into the VMAX. If, say, your opponent has ADP or Zacian V out, big time decks, of course, everybody's playing right now, then you're limiting them from attacking with those Pokemon. Even Zamazenta, it wouldn't be able to attack. So the second attack is pretty useful, and then rolling right into that, we evolve into our VMAX form, where we have 310 hit points, kind of low on a VMAX, but it is a giant mushy cake, so 310 hit points, I guess reasonable for a cake. But decorate. For each of your bench Pokemon, search for a Psychic Energy and attach it to that Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. So we're setting up our bench with Psychic Energies from our deck. So if we have a full bench, we can attach a Psychic Energy to every one of them. Now, this is where this comes in handy. So for 2 Psychic Energies, G-Max Finale does 60 damage, and you can discard any number of energy attached to your Pokemon that's attacked. Does 60 damage for each energy discarded in this way. Now, to clarify, it's not just Psychic Energies. You can discard any energy, and this applies to Alcremie VMAX's attack. So if we have other Pokemon on the bench, say, that have the Twin Energy, or special capture energy or any type of energy, it still applies to this. But we have this one attack up here, Decorate, to help set that up. So we can set up other Alchemy Vs or Gardevoir V that can play in contangent with this, especially since we'll be discarding Psychic Energies off Gardevoir when we're using the Soda Can. So these two definitely finding a partner for themselves, I think, in the meta. It's kind of clunky to have two VMAXs in a deck, but these two, I think, those two I would think partner very well. And especially just if you discard 6 energies off your bench or attach to any of your Pokemon, and that fact, it's 360 damage and you're taking KO. So moving along, we have Machop, and then Machamp. Machamp has a little bit of an interesting attack. I'm kind of curious to see if it gets played with at all, especially with the likes of Eternius, VMAX kind of ruling the meta a little bit. So has 170 hit points, which is actually pretty good for a stage 2. That's in the realm of actually having even more HP than, Dendini GX, and then only 10 shy of Crobat V. But Macho Revenge does 20 damage times the amount of fighting energies, fighting Pokemon in your discard pile. And throughout the rest of this set, we actually have some decent fighting Pokemon that we kind of see staggered throughout this set list. And some rumored coming out in Vivid Voltage that it actually might play in a hand of making this a little bit more useful of a card. In the likes of maybe running a 3-1-3 line with it. So that, again, being pretty big for one fighting, one colorless. If you say just have fighting Pokemon in the discard pile, you're doing 100 damage, weakness onto Eternius, you're doing 200 damage, and of course that just adds on and on and on. So kind of interesting. I'm looking to see how that turns out. We do get a Lucario V. Not really relevant to anything. He does have 210 hit points. His Aurora Sphere for 1 fighting energy does 40 damage. This attack also does 20 damage to one of your bench Pokemon, so you do get some snipe into it. Kind of reminds me of Buzzwole in a way, but we're doing actually 40 damage. But the trade-off, we're only doing 20 damage on a bench instead of 30 and 30. And then next we have Beat Smash, which does 180 damage for 2 fighting, 1 colorless, but you can't use it next turn. 180 damage, it does set you up for 2 hit KOs, but just for that 3 energy cost on a 2 price card attacker. Unless, again, we get a VMAX for Lucario V, hoping we get a VMAX for Lucario. I don't see it have really any relevant playing time. We do get a new Zegregade first form, but it only does 130 damage, and you have to discard a fighting energy, and it does cost 4. Does have 140 HP for a basic Pokemon, so that is kind of high, but I don't see it as anything really relevant. We get a new Rockruff that does for 1 colorless, draw a card, 1 fighting, 1 colorless, does 20 damage. Lycanroc can do up to 150 damage, but it can't use it next turn, but it does cost 3 energies. So moving along, we do get a different print of Roly-Poly, especially with the gold version of Colossal that we got. So this is another artwork that we're getting. And our next V is Grapploct V. So this one is also another kind of interesting one. I'm curious to see if it gets any play time just because of how big Eternatus VMAX is. I can kind of see this get thrown in maybe with a Colossal deck as a 2-prize card attacker to set up some big counter attacks, but we'll see. Let's take a look at the attacks. So for 1 fighting energy, does bind up, does 20 damage if the defending Pokemon is a basic Pokemon and can attack during their next turn. So again, Zacian V, Zamazenta V, ADP, all these big basic Pokemon, we're basically locking it down. Now, Moon Assault Press for 2 fighting, 1 colorless does 120 damage. Flip a coin if heads, the attack does 100 more damage. So we're doing 220. If you're hitting any type of dark Pokemon that doubles, that goes into 440. So you're taking a knock, one hit KO on Eternatus VMAX. If you're, say, hitting into an Eternatus, the 120 damage alone is knocking out the Eternatus. So I'm curious to see if this does get played around with a little bit as a tech in fighting decks to kind of take advantage of that fighting weakness on Eternatus. But we'll just have to wait and see. Ekans, Arbok, we get a new print of those. Nothing really relevant as far as them. Arbok does kind of have some cool artwork going on with what looks like maybe some electrical gas he's spitting out his mouth. That's kind of cool, but other than that, he doesn't have much going on. We do get a new Obstagoon line. Now, this Obstagoon is pretty nasty in some stall decks, and I could see it actually getting thrown in where maybe some people, especially in Eternatus decks, might throw in a rare candy or two to go along with those 4 Zigzagoons, and maybe a copy of this Obstagoon and a copy of our Rebel Clash Obstagoon to have in their decks. But that's just me kind of spinning my wheels and thinking how these Obstagoons could be pretty useful. Obstagoon, of course, seeing a lot of gameplay with the new Decidueye from Darkness Ablaze, so this could take a place of one of the goons in that deck for its ability. Let's take a look at it real quick. So, it does have 170 hit points, very good for a stage 2. And then its ability is what's going to cause some disruption. So ability Bad Ruler. Once during your turn, you may have your opponent discard hands from their hand or cards from their hand until they only have 4 cards left. That's pretty gnarly. I mean, let's say you have this out and they, take the knockout on, say, a Crobat V, and, now they just bump their hand up, say, to 8 cards. If you have this in play going into your turn right after that knockout, you can make them go down to 4 cards and make them possibly make some pretty difficult decisions on discarding some stuff in their hands. And then for 3 colorless, Knuckle Impact does 180 damage. That could be easily done with triple acceleration in the deck, and that can set you up for 2-hit KOs. So Galarian Obstagoon in this set definitely has some components that make it interesting and definitely playable in some decks, in my opinion. And I'll definitely be looking forward to try and kind of mix this maybe with my Eternatus or Decidueye Goon deck. Moving along, we get a new reprint of Absol. Not anything worth. Team Up Absol is better. We do get Purloin and then a Leopard with an ability that allows it not to be paralyzed. It's nothing big. We do get a Scrafty that has a pretty nifty second attack. It does have a little bit more higher energy cost than what I would like in a Pokemon, but it can be still utilized for 1 dark, 1 twin energy. So it does have 120 hit points, which is kind of standard for stage 1. But what makes it interesting is this bad raw attack. So it does 90 damage, plus if you play Piers this turn, it does another 90 damage. So you're potentially swinging for 180 damage off of 1 prize card attacker, plus you're getting an energy, plus you're getting a Pokemon off the Piers. So this is kind of interesting, and we've already got some cards leaked from Vivid Voltage that are going to utilize specific trainers to make them that much better. So this is going to be a trend we're seeing, especially in Champions Path, where they're partnering all these Pokemon up with their gym leaders or their trainers and utilizing those trainer cards to go hand in hand with the Pokemon to make them that much stronger and just a little bit more interesting gameplay. So kind of cool to play with the trainer and the Pokemon. We do get another print of Trubbish, but still does the same 20 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon does 50 more damage. We do get a new Inkay and Malamar. However, they're definitely not as good as the Forbidden Light, Inkay, and Malamar. So Malamar for 1 dark, 1 colorless, makes your opponent confused, and then for 2 dark, 1 colorless, does 80 damage, plus you get to flip coins. If you get both heads, it's only doing 80 more damage. So definitely not a good replacement for the ones we lost in rotation. We get a Nicotit outside of the one we just got in Darkness Ablaze. Again, not that great. And then we get another V. So Drulodon is one that's been getting a lot of play as a counter to Decidueye Goon decks and the ADP, Zacian, Zamazenta, Lucario, Melmetal decks. Now we have a V version. So Drulodon V does have 220 hit points, which is, again, pretty decent. That's same as a Zacian V. And then it also has the Hard Coat ability, which makes it take 30 less damage from attack. So now you take that 220, you add on the 30, now we're talking 250 hit points. Pretty good. All right, moving along. For 3 colorless energies, Gatling Slug does 10 damage plus 40 more damage for each metal energy attached to this Pokemon. So if we get 3 metal energies attached to this, we're swinging for 130 damage. Now, 130 damage, if you're able to get Drulodon to survive for 2 turns, that's only 260 damage. Not really setting up any knockouts. You're putting yourself shy. Take ADP for example, 20 points. You could, in instance, take out the knockout on Zacian V in 2 hits. I just don't see Drulodon V being a good partner for those decks. Drulodon baby version print is definitely better. I don't see this one being utilized. It's actually kind of like Galarian Stunfisk in a way. The more metal energies you attach to it, the more HP it got, but didn't see really a lot of play outside of pre-release decks, and that was about it. And that's kind of where I see Drulodon V stopping, unless we get maybe a VMAX version of him. Moving on, we do get a reprint of Swablu and Altaria. Altaria does have a nifty ability that we've kind of seen from it in the past when it comes to EXs, GXs. Now we're in the generation of Vs and Vmaxes, so it's getting a ability Miracle Guard that we have seen common with Altaria. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V and Pokemon GX. So basically immunity from all these strong attackers we are seeing in the meta right now. And for 2 colorless though, it only does 60 damage. So not really worth it. You're going to have to seriously be doing a lot of stall, a lot of crushing hammers, probably burning your opponent's deck, curse shovels, just a lot of different things to really make this worthwhile. Even Cape of Toughness is only knocking this up to 160 hit points, and everybody is pretty much running a tech card because of the Decidueye and Goon deck. So I don't see Altaria getting a lot of play right now. We do get reprints of some trainers we've already gotten: Bidet, Full Heal, Great Ball, Hop, Hyper Potion, Kabu, Marty, and continuing on throughout the list until we get to one of our new ones. So this one is Rotom Phone. It is an item card. It reads, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose a card you find there, and shuffle your deck, then put the card on top of your deck. So you get to look essentially at the top 5 cards, kind of like Pokegear, where we get to look at the top 7. But instead of adding it to your hand, you get to put it on top of your deck. Now, of course, a lot of people are still running the Oranguru from Sword and Shield that has the Primate Wisdom, so you can utilize this to a degree. Kind of search through your deck and look for what you're trying to find and pull off the top. But I don't really see this being utilized because there, of course, is just Professor's research. People are constantly mourning. I don't see this really being utilized a whole lot. Now we get a reprint of Sonya. Now this is the can that is going to go huge with all psychic decks. So let's go through it. It's an item card. Strange Canned Food is the actual text that'll be on the card. And we get to heal 80 damage from one of your Pokemon with the psychic energy attached to it. So it doesn't even have to be a psychic Pokemon. That's just kind of what this deck or card is being geared for, is those type of decks. But if you have a psychic energy period on it, whether it's metal, water, whatever type Pokemon, you can still take advantage of this card. And then you get to discard that psychic energy from that Pokemon when you use this card. So you get to heal 80 damage at the cost of 1 psychic energy. This is very good for setting up Gardevoir V. This is very good for Alcrary VMAX, because you can just simply gain that psychic energy back with the attack that lets you load up your Pokemon with a psychic energy. So this is going to see huge play come it flowing into rotation. And then from there, we just get another reprint of Team Yell Grunt and Turffield Stadium. And then, of course, all the full arts, rainbow arts, and, of course, one more look at the Shining Charizard V that everybody's going to be after. So that's it. That's the set. That's Champion's Path. It's supposed to release in the next couple of weeks after the huge announcement today of what the official set list was. And again, the big story is the Shiny Charizard V. Everybody is going to be after this card. Everybody is going to be after the Rainbow Charizard VMAX. These are going to be some of the most sought after cards we see throughout the entire Sword and Shield era as we go along throughout the meta for the rest of this season. It's just, you're going to see the market go huge, and for the price of these, even though this set is very small, I guarantee there's not going to be a lot of prints. I believe the ratio for the Charizard VMAX is you had to open 250 packs to basically get a chance to pull a Charizard VMAX. Obviously, some people were able to open less packs than that and get more than one copy. I was one of those people who opened close to 300 packs and didn't even get one. So I guarantee you the ratio on this is going to be much higher than the standard Charizard VMAX to go both with the Shiny Charizard and the Rainbow Charizard VMAX. So that's it, guys. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. I will be reviewing Vivid Voltage here soon. We do have quite a few translations for Vivid Voltage out already, but they're still working on the rest of the cards. And of course, don't miss any of our TCG online gameplay and any of our pack openings. Of course, we will be opening some Champion's Path once it releases, so make sure you be on the lookout for those videos. This is James Terry with JTZ TCG signing off. Gotta catch them all.